If you remember turn-based battles, random encounters, and traveling across an entire region, then don't expect to see any of that in Pokemon Legends ZA, because this game is a completely different take on the series. And in this video, we'll be comparing the new Pokemon ZA to the classic games, looking at how far the series has come and just how much it's changed. And don't worry, I won't be going into any story spoilers beyond what's already been shown in the trailers, and most of the footage I'm going to use is from the first couple of hours of the game. Okay, let's get straight into it. Now, the classic games all started at home in a cozy little town with you getting your Pokemon from the professor. Legends ZA subverts this by having a slightly older protagonist arrive in Lumio City by train. That's right, the very same Lumio City from X and Y, but more on that a little later. Now, despite these subversions, we see a lot of the old tropes make a return, like the world of Pokemon being introduced by someone older, and of course the protagonist choosing from one of the 3 starter Pokemon. And this time around we've got the fan favorite trio of Johto starters, Chikorita, Totodile, and... Wait, what's that? And what happened to Cyndaquil? Oh yes, that's right, they already used Cyndaquil as a starter in the Legends Arceus game, and it evolved into a very 420-friendly Typhlosion. So I guess that kind of explains this little fella here, but he does kind of feel like the odd one out. But hey, I'm just glad I can finally pick my boy Totodile as a starter again. The modern games get a bit of criticism from certain fans for pandering to nostalgia, but in this case I'm all for it. I have nothing but fond memories of bulldozing my way through the Johto region with my roided up Feraligatr back in the day. Just look at him, what an absolute unit. Look, he's got a neck like Mike Tyson. Oh god, I've only been in the city for 5 seconds and already someone's nicked all my stuff. Hey, come back! God, I miss Pallet Town. This leads you to your first battle with your new Pokemon. And if you're expecting the old school turn-based style of combat, you're in for a surprise. Don't get me wrong, the combat still keeps some of the core mechanics, but it's definitely had a major overhaul. Like Legends Arceus, you can move your trainer during combat. Look at that little shimmy. The battles aren't turn-based anymore either, it's a modern action RPG setup this time, with the 4 moves being mapped onto the face buttons, each with a cooldown. And personally, I think this strikes a pretty good balance. It's true to the series' core whilst modernizing it and making it feel like the battles in the anime from back in the day. This also results in the battles feeling a bit faster paced than they were back in the originals, as you're able to fire all 4 of the moves in the span of a few seconds. Unfortunately, this means that you're no longer able to run to the loo whilst your Totodile waits for instructions. And speaking of battles, back in the older games, trainers were usually scattered between towns, waiting to pounce the moment you stepped into their tiny line of sight. Legends ZA takes a slightly different approach. You see, Lumio City has enacted a purge-style system. After nightfall, the streets turn into a full-on battle free-for-all, where you're hunted by all sorts of vicious trainers, like these angry French waiters. Thankfully, there are safe zones around the city where you won't be attacked, like Hotel Z. Now, Hotel Z acts as your safe house in this game. You can change your outfits, fast forward time, and take part in several major story events alongside your companions from Team MZ, who are tasked with protecting the city from spoiler-related threats. Also, the hotel is run by this big fella who kind of looks like Hagrid if he went on Ozempic, shaved his beard, and dyed his hair. Now, in the original Pokemon X and Y, Lumio City was famous for being one giant circle, mainly filled with cafes, boutiques, and back alleys. And have no fear, circle enthusiasts, because in Pokemon Legends ZA, the city is still very much a circle, only this time much bigger. So big in fact, the entire game now takes place within the city. It's now been divided into districts, which gradually unlock more locations as you progress through the story. Plus, there is an entire rooftop section which you can explore. There are plenty of buildings, but as you'd expect from a modern Game Freak game, only a select few actually have doors to enter through. Most of the locations are tied to story, battles, or shops, and there are a lot of shops. Remember back in the day when the trainer just had one iconic outfit? Now, over the years, the game slowly introduced more outfits and customization options, but ZA takes that idea and runs wild with it. There is an entire shopping mall dedicated to fashion, packed with stores for every clothing imaginable. There's even a shop just for socks. Okay, but what about the campaign structure? Well, the original games were pretty hands-off. Oftentimes, you'd have to explore and piece things together yourself, relying on NPC character hints to figure out where to go next. On the other hand, the new game has much more of a modern mission-based structure, breaking the story down into objectives and waypoints to guide you along. The new game also clearly differentiates between main missions and side missions in the viewer. Now, letting your Pokemon out of its Pokeball was first introduced back in Pokemon Yellow, and it became a proper feature again in Gen 4. Just like all the other modern entries, ZA lets your Pokemon run alongside you in the overworld. Likewise, there are also going to be plenty of trainers on the streets of Lumiose with their own partner by their side. Unfortunately, the city can feel a bit empty, especially compared to other open world games set in bustling metropolis areas. Plus, let's be honest, when it comes to the visuals, this city does look like it's at least a generation or two behind. But unfortunately, that's become somewhat of a Game Freak trademark. Now, another staple of classic Pokemon games were the random encounters in wild areas like grass, caves, and the ocean. Now, Legend ZA, like other modern entries, has left that behind in favor of wild Pokemon appearing directly in the overworld. And I've always been for this change. To me, it greatly improves immersion. I mean, look, you can actually see the Pokemon living in their habitats rather than just popping out of nowhere. Since the game takes place inside Lumiose City, the wild areas are now contained within these specific urban wild zones. And I'll be honest, they're a bit small and most of the Pokemon in them can be caught in a few minutes. It seems like a really strange course correction when compared to the first Legends Arceus game, which was all about the wild areas and Pokemon catching. Now, at its core, the catching mechanic is still the same. You stock up on Pokeballs, weaken your target, and throw. The stronger the Pokemon, the more likely it is to break free. However, just like in Legends Arceus, you can now throw Pokeballs directly in the overworld without entering a battle. Now, don't get me wrong, the traditional combat option is still available, but it's no longer required. With that being said, I do feel like there's a little less finesse and strategy to it now. In the older games, you had to carefully lower the Pokemon's HP without making it faint. On the other hand, in ZA, you simply deplete its health bar, which opens up the catch window. Now, in the original games, you receive your Pokedex from a professor who entrusts you with the task of documenting and capturing every Pokemon in the region. The Pokedex is still a major part of Pokemon Legends ZA, but it has been given a more mission-based, research-focused twist. This time around, instead of simply catching one of every species, you take on research tasks from Mabel in the Lumiose Research Lab. These might involve catching specific types of Pokemon, observing their behaviors, or completing battle challenges. Completing these tasks earned you research points which level up your rank, which in turn give you rewards like TMs and candies. It's definitely a lot more of a micro-mission based approach when compared to the simple catch-em-all objective of the classics. The PC boxes are also still around, but this time they're fully integrated into the menu system, so there's no more running to the Pokemon Center just to swap out your team. And like other recent entries, ZA also streamlines your move management, letting you reteach any move your Pokemon has previously learned without having to dig through the TM pocket or make that painful forget forever choice. You can even auto-heal your party instead of having to dig through your item bag, and it's all very convenient, but being a 90s boomer, I still found myself doing it the old-fashioned way. And thankfully, you can now choose whether to evolve your Pokemon once it hits the required level, instead of frantically spamming B every time they level up. Likewise, Pokemon Centers make a return, only this time Nurse Jenny has also franchised them out to a series of pop-up stores where somehow she manages to heal your Pokemon with some condiments and 2 ice cream sundaes. Now, gym battles were the cornerstone of the classic Pokemon formula. You'd travel from town to town, defeating gym leaders and collecting badges until you were ready to take on the Elite Four. Pokemon Legends ZA shakes that structure up quite a bit. Instead of the traditional gym circuit, there is now a ranking system. You earn points by taking on generic trainers in the battle zones at night, and once you get enough points, you challenge a special trainer for an opportunity to move up in rank. Don't get me wrong, it's an interesting new approach, but it does have a tendency to become a bit repetitive and formulaic. Also, I'm not sure why you can't skip the cutscene which transitions to a new time of the day. But it's not all battles and Pokemon catching. Thankfully, ZA still retains that old school sense of exploration, mainly through its side quest system, which sends you on all sorts of weird and wonderful errands. For example, one quest has you searching for a lost ring in the graveyard. So is this a cemetery for humans or Pokemon? Either way, it's nice to have a callback to the Pokemon Tower from Lavender Town, and sure enough, look, it's even filled with Ghastlies just like that one. Then we have this side mission where you're asked to catch a Pikachu, and I love how now you can just sneak up on Pokemon in the wild before catching them. Huh? Oh no, my freedom! You can still trade Pokemon both in-game with NPCs and online via a wireless connection. And I do love how this animation is a fun reimagining of the classic trading sequence. Although look at this lady, she immediately evolves the Pikachu into a Raichu. Seriously? Haven't you seen the episode of the anime anime where Ash went up against Lieutenant Surge? Oh well, at least we got a Heracross out of it. The poor fella's struggling to keep up. Come back! Come back! Oh, I've got to quit smoking. It's a widely known fact that Heracross smoke like 20 packs a day. It even says it in the Pokédex. Every now and then you'll also run into these possessed Pokemon with glowing red eyes. Be careful, Totodile, I think this one's got rabies. Also, I really like how the status ailments are now visible when your Pokemon walk alongside you. Yeah, Totodile's definitely gonna think twice about eating that curry again. You can also sneak up on the trainers in the battle zones to get a first hit, although it's not gonna be that hard with NPCs like this. Also, I know this isn't exactly a new feature, but I really like that you can sit down on a bench and take a look at your entire party out of their Pokeball. I just think this is something we would have really loved back in the late 90s. And of course, this wouldn't be a modern Pokemon game without Mega Evolutions, and it wouldn't be a modern Pokemon game without giving them a new gimmick. This time, it's Rogue Evolutions. Every now and then, you'll encounter a wild Pokemon that spontaneously Mega Evolves on its own. These act as the major boss battles in this game, where the Pokemon has its own full health bar and it can even take out the trainer if you're not careful. The city is also covered in these Mega Shards, which you can collect and trade for Mega Stones. All of this ties into the game's central plot, where you investigate the mystery of why wild Pokemon are Mega Evolving on their own, and without going into spoilers, it's a pretty decent story as far as modern Pokemon stories go. And that's all well and good, you look great, giant upside down Slowbro, but the main reason I'm playing this game is to see my favorite boy from the past. Oh yes, here we go. Haha, look at this absolute unit. And so there we have it, Pokemon Legends ZA compared to the classic games. Overall, I quite enjoyed ZA, it's probably my favorite modern Switch era Pokemon game. Sure, it still suffers from the usual Game Freak issues like empty environments, no voice acting, and questionable graphics, but at least it seems like the developers genuinely tried to learn from past mistakes made in Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus. I think the biggest compliment I can give Legends ZA is that it comes closer than ever to the game we imagined back in the day as kids. Back when we were sitting in front of our Game Boys doing turn-based battles and trudging through random encounters in the grass, we dreamed of something bigger, a game that looked and played just like the anime. And Pokemon ZA, flaws and all, is the closest the series has ever come to making that dream real. But it's not there yet. It's clear that Game Freak are using the Legends series as more of an experimental platform. Legends Arceus had great exploration, but not enough battles. And now ZA seems to have the opposite problem. It's filled with battles but set in a city where the streets all look the same and there are only a few zones to catch Pokemon. So maybe, just maybe, the next entry in the Legends series, or God forbid the next mainline game in this multi-billion-dollar franchise, will finally get things right. But that's just my take. Please let me know your thoughts on Pokemon Legends ZA in the comments below. What do you like? What do you dislike? And what would you have done differently? As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to my existing patrons. If you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.